I'm Michelle Bryan-Mudd. I'm a professor of environmental law at the University of Montana School of Law. And in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Wilderness Act, I will be reading a selection from The Landscape of Harmony, 2 essays on wildness by Wendell Berry, from the first essay, Preserving Wildness. I chose this essay because it makes everybody a little bit uncomfortable. He challenges people on all sides of the issue to give a little bit, which I think is great. The argument over the proper relation of humanity to nature is becoming, as the 60s used to say, polarized. The result, as before, is bad talk on both sides. At one extreme are those who sound as if they are entirely in favor of nature. They assume that there is no necessary disjuncture or difference between the human estate and the estate of nature, that human good is in some simple way the same as natural good. At the other extreme are the nature conquerors, who have no patience for an old-fashioned outdoor farm, let alone a wilderness. These people divide all reality into 2 parts: human good, which they define as profit, comfort, and security, and everything else, which they understand as a stockpile of natural resources or raw materials, which will sooner or later be transformed into human good. If I had to choose, I would join the nature extremists against the technology extremists. But this choice seems poor, even assuming that it is possible. I would prefer to stay in the middle, not to avoid taking sides, because I think the middle is a side, as well as the real location of the problem. The middle, of course, is always rather roomy and bewildering territory. And so I should state plainly the assumptions that define the ground on which I intend to stand. 1. We live in a wilderness, in which we and our works occupy a tiny space and play a tiny part. We exist under its dispensation and by its tolerance. This wilderness, the universe, is somewhat hospitable to us, but is also absolutely dangerous to us. It is going to kill us sooner or later, and we are absolutely dependent upon it. 3, that we depend upon what we are endangered by is a problem not solvable by problem solving. It does not have what the romantic or the technocrat would regard as a solution. We are not going back to the Garden of Eden, nor are we going to manufacture an industrial paradise. 4, there does exist a possibility that we can live more or less in harmony with our native wilderness. I am betting my life that such a harmony is possible, but I do not believe that it can be achieved simply or easily, or that it can ever be perfect, and I am certain that it can never be made once for all, but is the forever unfinished life work of our species. 5, it is not possible, at least not for very long, for humans to intend their own good, specifically or exclusively. We cannot intend our good in the long run without intending the good of our place, which means ultimately the good of the world. 6, to use or not use nature is not a choice that is available to us. We can live only at the expense of other lives. Our choice has rather to do with how and how much to use. This is not a choice that can be decided satisfactorily in principle or in theory. It is a choice intransigently practical. That is, it must be worked out in local practice because, by necessity, the practice will vary somewhat from one locality to another. There is thus no practical way that we can intend the good of the world. Practice can only be local. 7. If there is no escape from the human use of nature, then human good cannot be simply synonymous with natural good. What these assumptions describe, of course, is the human predicament. It is a spiritual predicament, for it requires us to be properly humble and grateful. Time and again, it asks us to be still and wait. But it also is a practical problem, for it requires us to do things. The awareness that we are slowly growing into now is that the earthy wildness that we are so complexly dependent upon is at our mercy. It has become, in a sense, our artifact because it can only survive by a human understanding and forbearance that we must now make. The only thing we have to preserve nature with is culture. The only thing we have to preserve wildness with is domesticity. And so, though I am trying to unspecialize the idea and the job of preserving wildness, I am not against wildness preservation. I am only pointing out that the wildness we are trying to preserve is standing squarely in the way of our present economy, and that the wildernesses cannot survive if our economy does not change. The reason we preserve wilderness is that we need it. We need wilderness of all kinds, large and small, public and private. We need to go now and again into places where our work is disallowed, where our hopes and plans have no standing. We need to come into the presence of the unqualified and mysterious formality of creation. And I would agree with Edward Abbey that we need as well some tracts of what he calls absolute wilderness, which, through general agreement, none of us enters at all. We need wilderness also because wildness, nature, is one of our indispensable studies. We need to understand it as our source and preserver, as an essential measure of our history and behavior, and as the ultimate definer of our possibilities.